Reylo. You've heard of it, and you either love it or you hate it with a passion. In this video, I want to talk about the Force connection and romantic undertones that make the Kylo Ren and Rey pairing so interesting to me. If you hate Reylo, give this video a chance, and by the end of it, you might just come around to the seemingly weird internet thing called Reylo. I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan, and I actually think it is amazing. If you're already a Reylo lover, just sit back and enjoy as I go deep on this bizarre love connection that we all can't get enough of. Guys, today's video is sponsored by Amino. You've probably heard of Amino. Amino is an app that powers over 1 million different communities of fandoms in the world. This includes, of course, Star Wars. Amino is the official sponsor of Star Wars Sundays here on the channel, and I actually did an exclusive video for the Amino app, which you can only get if you go onto Amino and then check it out. It'll be a featured post on there. It's really cool and easy for you to find. The app itself has a ton of really cool features, including public forums, featured posts, quizzes, fan art, and all sorts of cool stuff like that. I am on the Amino app as Josh Lucas. Make sure you check that out. Follow me and get the exclusive Den of Nerds content, which will be up on Amino. Alright everyone, let's talk some Reylo, but before we do, I want to preface this whole video by slapping my nerd card onto the table. Now this is mostly for the haters because I think it will help them to take my points a bit more seriously as I go through why I actually love Reylo. So I say to my hardcore Star Wars brothers and sisters, I am one of you. I literally grew up on the original trilogy, and I remember actually watching Han shoot first. I went deep onto the EU, especially on the Timothy Zahn novels and the John Jackson Miller comics. I loved all of that stuff. When I went to college, I studied philosophy and sociology, trying to follow in the steps of the creator, George Lucas, as he studied the monomyth from Joseph Campbell and other bits of ancient myth and philosophy. I play a number of Star Wars Fantasy Flight games. I think Revan is probably the best Jedi that ever was, and I knew who the Wills were way before they were mentioned in Rogue One. I say all of this to tell you I am a hardcore Star Wars fan, about as hardcore as they come, and yet I do like Reylo. Now I think some of the stigma that comes with this whole Reylo thing has to do with some of its origin. I would refer to this as the shipping problem. Now I don't actually have a problem with shippers in general. I think it's kind of a cool part of fiction. People like certain characters together and they ship them. And I do ship a couple of things here and there, but I wouldn't consider myself a shipper. It's not something that I actively look for in my fiction, and it's definitely not something that I would say my fandom is enveloped in. However, even the more academic Reylo supporters do owe a great debt to a group of shippers that, with their passion for this ship, literally went out and uncovered a lot of evidence that suggested that this Rey and Kylo Ren connection was Disney's endgame for this current saga. Now, even though I don't personally have a problem with shippers, as I just said, I like people expressing their love in their fandoms any which way they want to. And even with that out there, I do have to admit, I believe that the Reylo connection does get sort of a bad name because of its origin as a ship. The way that it looks to hardcore people or to more academic Star Wars fans is that a bunch of fangirls and fanboys just love the idea of this bad boy and this Force chick getting together, working out their differences, and living happy ever after with babies. There's a lot of fan art out there that tends to be a little silly, and I believe all of this stuff in some way works against the seriously awesome aspects of the Reylo connection, and it gives this whole thing a sort of stigma of being silly, of being bizarre, of being absurd. You take your pick. Once again, it doesn't ruin it at all for me. I love that side of the Reylo fan base as well as the more academic side, but I do believe that the origins of Reylo, which have to do a lot with shipping, has something to do with the stigma that is on it currently. Reylo is actually a brilliantly put together version of the star-crossed lovers trope, with each person in this case representing an aspect of the Force. Now, if you want a detailed explanation as for why people believe that Reylo or Kylo Ren and Rey having a romantic connection is endgame for Disney, I suggest you check out the Vincent Vendetta videos, which really outline this theory and how all of the shippers went out there with passion and discovered secrets from different interviews, from different source material, different things out there that really lay this out there. I also did a Reylo explained video the day that The Last Jedi came out. It does a great job of sort of aggregating a lot of this information and putting it in a nice digestible format. So go check those out. But I do want to say here that a lot of this had to do with a trope that is referred to as Death and the Maiden. This is a weird love connection in which audiences are not supposed to be able to fully understand it. It has to do with a truly female character that is motherly and is abducted by a monster. She comes to see the monster as more than just a monster and something that was created. She sees the human side of this monster in front of her. She understands that this is a creation of the evil in the world, not the evil in the world itself. This is very similar to Luke seeing the good in his father, Darth Vader, who was, let's be honest, one of the worst bad guys of all time. The original trilogy has to do with Luke loving his father despite everything and seeing the good still inside him. That is very similar to what is happening with Rey as she looks at Ben Solo, except in this case, the tension is not fueled by a family love or the connection of a father and a son, but instead is given this bizarre attraction. It is fueled by a strange sexuality that is hard for the viewer to understand, but also incredibly exciting to watch. You see, there is this perennial aspect to the Death and the Maiden trope, which is bizarre and we don't understand. It speaks to the very animalistic natures of our sexuality. It's truly hot and complex. On top of all of that, I believe that this love connection is very similar to the Bastila and Revan connection, which so many Star Wars fans unanimously hail as a great love story and a great Star Wars story. I think if you can see the similarities between Revan and Kylo and Bastila, Sean and Rey, I think you'll start to come around on this whole Reylo thing. Another reason that I think hardcore Star Wars fans should find the Reylo connection so interesting is that it is a combination of romance and the Force. Now, the Jedi were very explicit about not allowing attachments and not allowing their Jedi or their Padawans to experience the kind of connection that we would refer to as loving or romantic. What this Reylo connection does is explain the possibilities that are always out there when two Force users come into a union that is not restricted by the dogma of Yoda's Jedi. They are allowed to see each other's past, present, and future, and the way they fight together and they are connected by the Force is so incredible. It lays the groundwork for future Force couples, which could be incredibly badass, and it would allow them to be very strong together. I think if you're a fan of the Force and the lore of the Force, you should be a fan of this Reylo thing because it is pushing our experiences with the Force and the Great Mystery into a whole new arena. On top of that, I truly believe this gives us the most amazing tension we have had in Star Wars ever. I mean, if you thought the Obi-Wan and Anakin fight at the end of Sith had high tension, man, this Reylo thing is on another level. Like I said, we've never really seen this kind of tension before that is fueled by obvious attraction and obvious romance. And even if you didn't like The Last Jedi, Jedi, you have to admit that the connection between Kylo Ren and Rey and their scenes together is the best part of that film. That's one of the really bizarre ironies of this whole Reylo thing, because I believe it gets attached to some of the problems that are in The Last Jedi, when the fact is, objectively, Reylo is the best part of The Last Jedi, and I dare you to find a fan that is just being honest and objective that would argue the counter. Their moments together and the connection that they both share to Luke Skywalker is the beating heart of the film. Everybody wants less Canto Bight, and they wanted more Kylo Ren, Rey, and Luke Skywalker. It was amazing. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here, and the last reason that all of the Reylo haters should come around, because Reylo is the only logical path to more Skywalker stories. If you're a fan of Star Wars the way I am, you understand how important the Skywalker lineage is to this whole thing. Now, I am pumped to see stories that take place away from the Skywalkers and that have to do with different characters, different sides of the galaxy, but at the end of the day, I do want a return to the Skywalker line. I want that kind of Shakespearean circular storytelling that I expect Star Wars to be, and I want Kylo Ren and Rey to have children, and I want the next series of films to be about their children dealing with their own strength and finding their own way in the galaxy. I think almost 99% of Star Wars fans want more Skywalker stories, and the Reylo connection is our only way to get there. Now, I want to stop here and say that I think it's actually possible that Rey is already pregnant, and I have a pretty interesting theory as to how this could have happened in The Last Jedi. This is actually the bonus video, which I am going to put up exclusively on the Amino app, because Amino is the official sponsor of Star Wars Sundays here on the channel. So if you're a hardcore Reylo person or just curious, go sign up for the app and check out my How Rey Could Already Be Pregnant video on the Amino app. So that's it, guys. Whether you're a lover or a hater of Reylo, I hope you found this video interesting. Do let me know in the comment section if you are a Reylo hater or just not a fan of what Disney is doing with Star Wars right now. I'm curious whether or not any of the things I brought up sort of gave you pause or made you think about some of these things. Ultimately, I believe we all love Star Wars, and there's going to be things within Star Wars that you're not a fan of, and I think that that is okay. But I just wanted to make this video because I love Reylo so much, and the Reylo community has been incredibly kind to me, and so I wanted to sort of get my feelings out there about this and explain to more hardcore fans why they should at least not crap all over Reylo, even if they don't come to appreciate it. All right, let's check that nerd card really quickly. I want to know, what were the colors of Revan's lightsabers? Yeah, I name dropped Revan earlier in the video. I want to know, what were the two colors of his main lightsabers? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I will see you in the next video.